So then I was like, well, you knew too, Grandpa, but you didn't say anything. My name is Noreen Shubert. I was born a LeRoy. My third great grandparents would have been Francois and Thérèse.
Francois and Thérèse LeRoy built Portage's most well-known Métis home, which was later repurposed as the Fort Winnebago Surgeons' Quarters. When Mah-kée-mee-teuv Francois came to the area, he carried on the portaging business begun by Thérèse's parents, Jean Lecuyer and Monatisi Dakota. Francois and Thérèse's son came of age at the peak of Métis Portage's cultural collision course.
They had a son, John, would have been their oldest. He married Ursula Lassard from Prairie du Chien. They had one child, John, which got very confusing for me in my research. He eventually moved to Wrightstown. He married Eliza Victor, who was from Wrightstown at that time, and that's pretty much where the family stayed for the longest time. Eliza and John had 9 children. The youngest was Sherman, which would have been my grandfather. And then Sherman married someone from the Kimberly area, Esther Pronto. They had 4 sons. The third son is my father. His name was Damien. At first it seems like a big gap, and then the more you hear these people's names, the more familiar they become. It seems like that gap just narrows.
Although Noreen's grandfather was John and Ursula's grandson, the family's native connections weren't a topic of conversation.
Not until high school, and I think it was kind of accidental in that it was my uncle's wife, and I'm pretty sure she was the one who saw that they were moving Tank Cottage, or Tonk Cottage, however you want to pronounce that. They were moving it to Heritage Hill, and I think because she saw Roy and LeRoy, she thought she would dive into it to see if there was any relatives there. So she was the one on our side of the family who dug into it and told us, you know what, Joseph Roy, he had at least one Native American wife. And it's like, oh, okay. So that was the first time we'd ever heard of it, and I really didn't think much of it at that point, other than, okay, you know, because when you're young, history is like, you don't bother with it much. I think it was the social stigma of, you know, having Native ancestry. It was just something that, you know, the U.S. government tried to push them out, and everyone was kind of like, oh, yeah, those people. So I think it was trying to hide it, that maybe they would fit in better if they just pretended that they were just white. And I think that's what happened. I know another descendant who was working with my uncle's wife wrote in one of his letters that it would have been a whole lot easier finding information about the LeRoy family had Aunt Jo not been so hush-hush about the Indians in the family. So some people knew about it, but it was not to be talked about, evidently. My kids, they ended up getting a high school project that said, build your family tree. And of course they came to me, and I'm like, I know nothing beyond my grandparents. And then I remembered that my uncle's wife had done this, some research, so I went to her, and she actually ended up giving me her whole photo album of stuff she had collected and letters she had gotten from other people. And when I started reading that, it was mostly Joseph Roy, the Menominee side, but you would see these names, you know, Chief Grizzly Bear, and so then it became a little more real, and that's when I really wanted to dive into, well, where did we come from?
Recent research of Métis and Native culture spurred memories for Noreen.
One of them talked about the Métis and the jigging, and I'm like, jig? My dad used to do what he called a stiff-legged jig, and I had never heard of anyone else use jig to mean dance, and it's like, I wonder if that was something that was passed on that he just never really admitted to. And he always called us, the children, Indians, and it never dawned on me that it was, we all had, you know, dark, straight hair, but it never dawned on me that we were actually Indian. It's just like, cowboys and Indians, you look like Indians. And that was another one of those, oh, okay. And then thinking about my grandpa, he taught us string tricks. And when I became a teacher, I was researching games of Native Americans, and sure enough, those string tricks actually had that Native American origin. So then I was like, well, you knew too, Grandpa, but you didn't say anything. Oh, big time. I mean, you see them in this historical light that you never would have thought before. When I was little, we went to Green Bay maybe twice a year, maybe visiting family there or going shopping, and it was just a big city to me where, oh, we've got big department stores and we can eat in a restaurant. Now when I go there, you look at the names of the streets and try to figure out where that fits into your history. I imagine, what did Joseph Roy see when he came here and settled here? Why would he have done that, and what would he have seen? And yeah, it just brings a whole different perspective to those cities. And I did not understand or know about that whole removal process. That just, it almost made me angry that you did this, U.S. government, to these people, and that would have been one of the things that I did not know that, that historically is important to me now to know and understand.
John LeRoy has been an ancestor of particular interest.
He played the fiddle, did not realize that, and he was mentioned down in Madison during a 4th of July celebration. He played his fiddle. It wasn't too long ago that I learned about John being a translator, and that floored me. It's like, yes, he spoke at least 3 languages fluently and did the Treaty of 1837, and I'm like, wow, paid $2,000 to do it? I'm like, well, that was a lot back then. I would think that would have been very difficult because he needed to get it right for his people. And when you read about, especially that Treaty of 1837, how the government kind of just turned everything on end, he had to have felt betrayed at some point. And maybe I thought, well, did he even possibly think that was his fault? Because I know they talked about, the government said you have to leave in 4 months, whereas they thought it was 4 years. Was it going through his head that it was something he didn't do that caused this mix-up? And yeah, I would not have wanted to have been in his shoes. It had to have been a difficult job.
Following John's death during the year of the Ho-Chunk expulsion across the Mississippi, his widow Ursula remarried Charles Levine of Ojibwe, German, and French ancestry. Their family stayed at Portage near her Mah-kée-mee-teuv relatives, and some of their descendants still live at Portage today. Ursula and John's son, however, branched off in a different direction.
Ursula stayed in Portage, as you know. Her son John, which would be my great-grandfather, she had married John Sr., John Roy, and he passed away probably within the year that John was born. And then there was a census, I believe it was the 1850 census, where there was a John listed under Francois, but he was only 11 years old, which would have been the son of John. And I'm thinking, well, maybe they took him in for a while at a certain age, and that's why he showed up in that household on that census. But then John ended up in Wrightstown, which is south of Green Bay. People don't know that. But how he got there, I don't know, unless it was because Joseph Roy was from Green Bay, and there might have been other Leroy relatives in that area. And then Wrightstown, my grandpa and my dad both, that's where they were raised.
For this family, a choice to remain within settler society brought its own set of challenges.
It had to have been, uncertainty. When you start having these different groups coming in that now have different languages, and this us and them is becoming a bigger us and them. I don't know that those people that came in would have also been like the French and would have been accommodating and tried to fit in. I think it forced the Métis to really have to adapt, and I think that's probably when some of them started hiding it. It's like, I don't want to be the odd man out. If the French had not gotten there first, I don't think there ever would have been that kind of blending. I mean, the French were not there to grab the land. They were there to live. They took on the language of the natives sometimes. They lived in their communities, they married into their tribes. And I think if there had been maybe a different European culture that had gotten there and didn't do that, things would have been completely different. Even though it was hundreds of years ago that some of these relatives lived, you start learning about them and they become your family in your brain, and you go, oh, they're not that far away. You know, it's like the time just shrinks for some reason.